Hi, my name is Steve Strope, and I own a little company in Simi Valley, California named PureVision. And what we do is, well, these things. Now this is the Martini Mustang. We've been very honored this year, 2012 SEMA. We've won the Ford Award, Best of Show. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about the car and actually the idea and the theme behind it before we get into the nuts and bolts. No pun intended being ARP. So the Martini Mustang came from an idea of, I love racing, grew up around a lot of racing and road racing near Watkins Glen, New York. And we had a customer that wanted to do a fastback Mustang. I had an idea that I wanted to do a race livery on it. But I didn't want to do golf racing, which everybody does. And believe me, I love it as much as everyone, but I don't like being the same. So I started thinking of the other famous race team livery, which means the colors, the scheme. And I love the Martini race scheme. So that started the whole ball going. And I'm like, well, if Ford got together with Martini in around '66, which was a little early for Martini for you fact guys. I know they really started out doing stuff in around '68, but it's what the heck anyway. So if they would have got together, Martini said something like, well, let's do some rally racing over in Europe. Ford said, you know what, we'd like the Mustang's presence over there some more. I did some research and found out that the real first racing that the Mustang did, they took first and second place in the Tour de France, not the bicycle race, road rally race, in late '64. So the Mustang's first racing was actually road racing in Europe. So I took that theme and went with it. And I'm like, well, they could have taken all the lightweight parts they had for their Shelby R model, and we need to think of a different motor. We don't want to do just the same old small block or even big block V8. So through searching and talking to some people, we landed upon this little jewel here, which is a '66-'67 Ford Indianapolis 4-cam motor. And what Indianapolis means is that motor was in their Indy cars, and their Indy cars only. Up until a little later, they wound up going into sprint cars. So it's a very rare piece that we found one through Ed Pink, which of course Ed Pink Racing Engines did the motor for us. It's a little screamer, goes up to about $9 grand. So what we have now is a very different approach to a car that's been done a million ways. So we got noticed, and we were awarded as such. So I want to tell you about the details around the car, not just the motor, that make it up. Now, besides the very, very striking paint job and that Indy motor, some of the main features are these lovely wheels. Now, they were made for me by EVOD Industries. EVOD specializes in one-off custom wheels, and they come to my rescue quite often for beautiful designs that I just can't get off the shelf. Now, these wheels are patterned after the same car the motor came out of, which is the mid-'60s Indy cars. They're a 4-spoke wheel, and these wheels on this car are actually a pin drive. There are 5, they're perfectly round lug nuts that hold the adapter spinner on, and then the back of the rim has 5 holes perfectly that it slides onto, and then the spinner holds the wheel onto that adapter. So there's 5 pins that are actually turning that rim, and the spinner holds the wheel in place. We have a very cool bunch of lightweight parts all around the car. I wanted to stay error correct, so it's fiberglass this time instead of carbon fiber. I got all the fiberglass parts from Meyer Racing. Now, they've been doing Mustang racing parts since probably, I think, around the '70s into the '80s. So they've been doing it a long time. We cut up some of their stuff because I can't leave anything alone. We've tucked the bumpers in. We've redesigned the front valance and the chin spoiler, and we actually took some molds of that, so we'll have some available if somebody wants to kind of clone what we've done here. We also have some lightweight drivetrain parts. The transmission in this car is from a place called CR Performance. It is basically an illegal NASCAR 4-speed. The reason I said illegal is because it's too light. Once they came out with that tranny, it only weighs 63 pounds. The other transmission manufacturers couldn't keep up, and they said, hey, you got to make a rule to make transmissions heavier than that. So now those trannies have to be probably around 80 pounds. But we got one of the cool ones that didn't have to have all the extra weight put in it. CNR also did the custom aluminum radiator for this, and the third member that's in a Ford 9-inch housing. what makes the third member special, it actually has a built-in pump inside of it that goes off to a little cooler piece that is a rear diff cooler, which keeps the fluid, the lube in the back nice and cool from running and running and running and running. Now, one of the other very, very special parts on this car, which unfortunately we can't see very well right now, is the Detroit Speed Engineering suspension. We actually have serial number 2. Number 1 is on Kyle's Mule car that actually won Street Machine of the Year with Popular Hot Rodding magazine. It is a very elaborate, very, very, very cool suspension that circles around an aluminum cradle. It's not a bolt-in steel piece that you weld in. It's actually a forged aluminum or a cast aluminum cradle that you do a series of modifications to put in. The suspension is unbelievably adjustable, but it's super simple to use. It's actually star geared, so you can go from your road setting to your track day setting with a turn of a couple of wrenches, and it's perfect every time you move and select the other one. You can't screw it up. It's absolutely ingenious, and Kyle should be very, very proud of the suspension. He also has a matching rear suspension, which is a 4-bar with a panhard, and the 9-inch housing I spoke of comes with the kit. It's already got all his hangers and mounting tabs for the 4-bar and all the other pieces like the shocks. Speaking of which, the shocks in this car are from a fantastic company called JRI. If you're unfamiliar with them, they come from the NASCAR world. Jeff Ryan, which is JR, it came from designing IndyCar shocks, Fox shocks, Penske shocks. He has a lot of credibility, and the shocks are probably the best in the business for what we do. Also, for you guys that drag race, his stuff is fantastic, and they have incredible off-road shocks too. So you want to go check out JRI for your shock absorbers. We use them exclusively. Now, throughout the car, even as crazy modified as this car is, there's parts and pieces that we need, like weather stripping, sealant, little trim pieces, and we get all of those from Year One. One of my favorite companies to work with, because you can just open up the catalog and get pretty much everything, even some of the weird whack job Shelby R parts that you can get from those guys, which is kind of cool. It's really handy to be open up a catalog and just get what you need. Now, one thing you'll notice about this car, as all our cars that we build, is we use ARP fasteners exclusively. Now, there's many technical reasons why they're better than everything else on the planet, but for me, it's pretty much jewelry for the car, and I never have to worry about them breaking or any problems like that. Then we use pretty much everything. This car, we focused on using 12-point. We'd like to try and keep a theme throughout the car, so this vehicle uses 12-point fasteners throughout. We actually had a hardware set written up from Ed Pink when they were building the motor, so even the internals use the high quality ARP fasteners. So we use them in the suspension, we use them to hold the steering column up under the dash, we use them to hold the fenders in place, we use them for absolutely everything, and I could not recommend higher using ARP fasteners. Now, as much as I love designing the outside of this car, the inside is my favorite. It's actually one of the more difficult places to go modifying and changing things. Things can go horribly wrong really fast in the interior, and one of the challenges is doing a lot with nothing. Now, I wanted to do a race car style interior, which means everything has to be dumbed down and simplified, and what you run into the risk of doing is having it empty and boring. I tried very hard not to do that, and there's parts and pieces all over this interior. Even the door panels and the seats are special to this. Now, I worked with my interior guy, Eric Thorson, from Eric Thorson Custom Upholstery. We laid out a very simple pattern that we wanted reminiscent of a Ford door panel, but after that there's just a simple hole in the door to pull the door shut and a pull handle for the interior door release. I got the pull handle from Porsche RSR idea. Same with the interior here. We laid it out, I removed the dash pad, kept one of the dash pad reinforcement plates, made it unboltable, and just had Eric leather wrap it real quick, simplify the top, made my own dash insert. We had gauges done by Shannon at Redline Gauge Works because I theorized this car would be racing over in Europe or in Germany. The gauges are done in German with Porsche font. A very, very, very simple Flaming River steering column with a quick release hub. I did AC Cobra pedals and 427 big block Cobra throttle pedal. The neat little piece you see down here on the floor, that is a navigator's footrest. This would be the gentleman next to you reading the maps, telling you where you're going during the rally races, and little pieces like the clock and chrono, and they're sitting in a Shelby R reproduction radio delete panel. Now the little switches and knobs, you Ford guys are going to notice that they're not factory at all. They're pieces that I got actually over in Europe. So I wanted European switches and knobs and dials. So it's all there and familiar, but I changed it up just a little bit and made it very purposeful for what I thought would be road rally racing, but with a lot of our attention to detail. Now in the back, the European road race theme continues on. European spec taillight lenses. We actually found these online on eBay, but the Mustang has one bulb that is for brake, and then it interrupts for turn signal. So we made a wall inside of here that separated the turn signal, put another hole in for another bulb, and wired it our own way. So this is turn only, this is brake only. You'll notice that the Meyer Racing bumper that's been cut and tucked in, that's all been flushed. Down here, hopefully the cameraman can get some B-roll later. Behind these two mesh screens, this mesh screen is for airflow. There's actually a small cooler here that I spoke of before. That's the rear differential cooler. And there's a stone guard in front of it too that's mesh. Now here I wanted to be symmetrical, and I'm like, well, what could I put back here? This is actually the backup light behind it. And on the dash there's a switch for it with a flashing white bulb that says, hey, your backup light's on. So that rounded that out. And in the trunk, again, I tried to emulate the Shelby R theme. So this is a tank from Fuel Safe, which is actually a bolt-in unit with a bladder inside of it, and it's spec legal. But I changed their plate here to accept this spill tank, or this spill bowl, I guess you would call it, and this flip-top gas cap. This is very reminiscent of what the Shelby R's had for very fast fuel stops. There's really nothing under this car besides the tubing and the mufflers we got from SpinTech and Detroit Speed's suspension. All the hoses and wires and everything are actually tucked up. They run through the rockers. The whole fuel system runs through the rockers. So there's nothing underneath to get damaged in a road race. And that is a very quick tour of the Martini Mustang. Thanks for watching.